Hi folks, and in this video what we're going to look at is creating some form of data table to basically start making some weapons with different skills and attributes too. These will then be used so we can do set damage depending on what we actually have as a pickup to our characters. So at this moment in time, if I go to shoot our boxes, we take 0.2 damage off in the float, or 20 damage off the actual character. But what we're going to look at is perhaps playing around with that and building something a bit more interesting with different data tables for different objects that we can pick up. So the first thing we're actually going to do is we're going to create a structure. We do that by going to right click here, then go to blueprints and structure, and this is going to be for the different weapon types that we can have. So just call the structure weapon types, just like so. And you're going to want to have two different variables within this one. The first one we will call the actual weapon name, and we want to set that to a string. So perhaps if we have specifically named weapons in the game, we can hold that data within it and have it maybe floating above the actual object before you go to pick it up. And the second one will be the actual weapons damage. Now with the weapons damage we have to set this to a floating point, just like the damage previously done, which will then of course subtract from the overall health of the enemy target. Now what we could do is we could choose to do this through an array system and then create loads of multiple names and damage types in here, but it's perhaps not the most efficient way, and it's not the best way to actually look at this represented data, especially for something which is going to have multiple amounts of effectively weapons and data. So what we're going to do with this one is we're going to create a data table, just because it looks like a spreadsheet, and if you know anything about games design, you'll notice that games developers love spreadsheets. So what we're going to do is right click on miscellaneous, and then we're going to go up to where it says data table. So import spreadsheet table, just like so. Now the first thing it asks you is to pick a structure, and in this case we're going to use the weapon type, just like so, and then press OK. Now we're going to have to give this a name, so we'll call this weapon type data table, and then all of a sudden you'll notice we have the actual data table for this lovely structure in here. Now if we want to add new weapons into this list, we simply do so by pressing the plus button, like so. We give it a name, so the first object we could create would be our pistol. Now what we might want to do is give a category or maybe some sort of data to determine which weapon we're talking about. So we might choose light pistol as our category. The name might be called, I don't know, something like Deathbringer. And then the actual amount of damage it can do, in this case because it's a pistol, I'll set it to 0.1. Now what we want to do is add a second weapon to play around with to make sure this works. If I then press the plus button, you'll notice we get a separate row with this data, which is just a bit more manageable to use than creating some sort of array system through the structure. So what we might call this is light rifle. Give it a name, just rifle this time, and we'll set this damage to be 0.2, like so. Now if I save this, we now have an updated data table that we can use. So if we go into our main player, like so, what we're first going to do is we're going to create a function just to say what the current weapon is. So we do that by going to functions, then current function, then say current weapon, just like so. And what we're going to do from here is we're going to find the table by dragging out and then typing data table, like so, and we want get data table row, just like this one. Now what you have to do here is you have to actually select the data table, so this is going to be our weapon type data table, like so, and then we're going to choose what kind of weapon we want. Now later on we could assign this to some sort of list which picks up objects from an inventory, or perhaps whatever we've walked over sets this information in here for the different row. So what we're then going to do is we're going to take some of the data from this data table by going to the out row, dragging out this one and breaking the weapon type. Now what you'll notice is we have two pieces of data, the name and the damage, which of course we created in our structure, which is therefore in our lovely data table. With this, what we'll do is we'll then create a variable to set our weapon damage for this particular weapon too. So we go to variable, we'll call this current weapon damage, like so. Set this to a floating point, compile it, drag it in, set it, then set it like so, and then drag it into the row found just like this. Now if we compile this, we should then have a current weapon damage set to this pistol. If I change it here, it'll then go to the rifle, but for now we'll just use the pistol. Now we just have to set this so this actual function runs. We're going to do this by going to the lovely event begin, grab on the function like so, and attach it here, then compile. Now we have to make sure the damage is doing the correct amount of damage to the enemy. So if we go to the take away from enemy function, so that was the one where the actual damage was coming from, and instead of the 0.2, we'll replace that with current damage, just like so, and recompile it. Now, when we go to play the game and we shoot our targets, you'll notice 10 damage is coming off instead of the 20, like previously. Right, so that's showing that the pistol's working. Now, let's get it to work for the actual light rifle. We just swap that data over like so, go to play, and there you go. And that's how you get data from a structure to a data table to then apply that information to a target or an object within the game world.